وموضوع جلستنا التالية بالتأكيد سوف يعجبك لأنها تتكلم عن التكنولوجيا، شيء قريب منا كطلاب. عنوانها المواطنة الرقمية في التطبيق، الأخلاقيات والمسؤولية والتمكين في التعليم، بإدارة الأستاذة ناتاليا جاسزوك من هاشيت ليرننغ من المملكة المتحدة.
You're right, Wafa. That's totally our world. This panel will explore how technology, ethics, and empowerment shape the responsible digital citizens of tomorrow.
Thank you very much. That sounds like a cue for me to jump in. Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me. I'm Natalia Jastruk, VP of Product at Hachette Learning, and I'm very honored to host the next session. I have also with me a very esteemed panel of guests. I will introduce them very shortly, and we'll go straight into questions just after that. So my first panelist that's joining me is Richard, who is the CEO of ISTE and ASCD, who is focused on creating the next generation of innovative learning leaders. Richard also served as the Chief Innovation Officer of the state of Rhode Island and was appointed by President Barack Obama to lead the US Department of Education's Office of Educational Technology. He's also an author. His book, Digital for Good, Raising Kids to Thrive in an Online World, aims to help create conditions for healthy tech use at home and school. Are you with us, Richard?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Hello.
Hi, thanks.
All right, let me introduce our second panelist, Gemma Wilson-Clark. She's the head of the Safe to Learn Secretariat, hosted by UNICEF, where she leads a coalition of 16 global partners committed to ending violence in and through schools. With extensive experience in education, child protection, and international development, she has worked across Africa, the Middle East, and globally to integrate safety, inclusion, and well-being into education systems. Gemma specializes in building coalitions, driving policy change, and advancing advocacy that places children's voices and rights at the center. Gemma, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, Natalia.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And last but definitely not least, we've got Dr. Hamad Orabi, who is the Vice Chancellor for AI and Operational Excellence at Abu Dhabi University. He has over 2 decades of experience in academic and research leadership roles in higher education and in technology, both in the United Kingdom as well as the UAE. Before joining Abu Dhabi University in 2019, Dr. Hamad spent almost 16 years with the higher colleges of technology in the UAE, where he built a dynamic team across 17 colleges, significantly increased student enrollment, and received international accreditation for his 2 courses. He also co-authored or authored over 20 research papers in international journals and conferences on educational technology, education and training, and web-based education. Dr. Hamad, are you with us as well?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. So let's jump straight in. Our panel looks at digital citizenship in action, at ethics, responsibility, and empowerment in education. And I thought before we go into any more detailed questions, perhaps we can actually define digital citizenship, because it's quite a broad term. So perhaps I would only start by saying that to me, it's a set of behaviors or values that govern how we participate, how we engage with other people. It governs sort of the ethics and empathy and agency in online space. But I wonder if any of my panelists would like to add anything on that, on top of that.
If I could just add something, I do worry that a lot of times we talk about digital citizenship and we think about all of the rules and we think about all of the things not to do and all of the mistakes not to make, and it becomes sometimes very technical, right? How do you not leave a digital footprint, and how do you not have your password not be changed, and how do you make sure you're not opening yourself up for any sort of online attack? I think sometimes we forget that citizen, that word citizen, means being part of a community. And being a good digital citizen means being a good member of the digital world. And so for me, a digital citizen is more about how are you contributing to making your digital community better than it is about just making sure you aren't, leaving some digital footprint, technical trail. It's about making the digital world a better place to live. And I want to make sure we don't ever forget that when we have these conversations.
That's a great addition. Thank
I
you.
can add, I agree with Richard. I think digital citizenship is a subset of being a world citizen. And whatever we do as human in the real world, we should do the same in the digital space.
Thank you very much. Gemma, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered it. Thank you. Yes, completely agree. I think if you create a system that's only about what you shouldn't do, a system that's only about control, then you lose the trust of young people. So you really need to ensure that you can build agency, build engagement, and then you get real digital citizens.
Thank you so much. And we will delve into all of these subtopics in a moment as well. And perhaps start from talking about how institutions and policymakers help define and embed digital ethics. And Gemma, I wonder if I could start with you to ask, from your global perspective, what do you believe are the most urgent ethical or safeguarding challenges that schools face today in digital spaces?
Thank you. Yes, when I was preparing for today, I was thinking back to my time as Chief of Education for UNICEF in Jordan, actually, and the many students I spoke with when visiting schools. And I remember being struck by two things. Firstly, the hope of children who often in situations of hardship still believe schools are their safe space, the place and the space that they can be with their friends, that they can learn. But second, how fragile that sense of safety can be. We all know cases of bullying and increasingly online harassment that have led to children stopping coming to school, dropping out of school, and often this is linked to inappropriate use of social media. And I think those conversations that I've had with young people have really stayed with me and reminded me that safety and learning can't be separated. That's why I'm in this area of work, because protecting children from violence, including in digital spaces, it's not a side issue, it's the foundation of learning itself. And unfortunately, I mean, the statistics that we have at the global level, they're very concerning. Around 246 million girls and boys experience violence in and around schools each year. And the World Bank has quantified that in terms of lost earnings, over $11 trillion in lost potential and lifetime earnings. I mean, that's looking at the economic impact of violence in schools, but really we're talking about child rights and their future potential. So as digital learning expands, I think the situation is changing fast, as we all know. Bullying, discrimination, harassment, it doesn't stop at the school gate, but it can also follow children online through cyberbullying, grooming, image-based abuse, exposure to harmful content. And schools now face, and teachers, school leaders face, ethical dilemmas that were unimaginable a decade ago. Now, how do we protect children when learning extends into private digital spaces? How do we regulate the use of student data collected by private sector edtech platforms? And how do we ensure that increasingly the use of AI tools in classrooms not only upholds children's rights, but also doesn't reproduce biases or introduce harm? So I think we all know that governments have a responsibility to make sure education systems protect children's safety offline and online, and technology can help that. But technology itself isn't going to be the answer. It has to be grounded in an understanding of children's rights and inclusion. And that's where the work of the Safe to Learn Coalition comes in, which is the organization that the coalition that I'm working with. We're a global coalition of 17 partners housed in UNICEF, bringing together government, civil society, and private sector to end violence in and through schools. And the Safe to Learn call to action lays out 5 steps that countries can take, and over 20 countries have endorsed the call to action so far and are measuring their progress against benchmarks. So that's, it's a government-facing framework, but I think, and it gives a system-based approach to thinking about embedding child protection in education systems. But what we've realized over the last couple of years is the desperate need to integrate digital safety into the call to action. And so that's what we're doing right now. UNICEF has great guidance. I'll put it in the chat. It's the 5 C's of digital risk that the UNICEF guidance speaks about: content, contact, conduct, contract, and cross-cutting risks. Bit jargony, but it's a helpful way when you read the guidance of thinking about the kind of action that can be taken. And that means in practice things like integrating online safety into teacher training, embedding respectful digital behaviour in curricula, and ensuring that EdTech platforms are designed with safeguarding in mind. I'm mindful of time, so I'll stop there. There's a lot more I could say, but I think there's some really good examples at a national level of how these ethical issues are being addressed within education systems. And I think that if we can really think about the ethics when we build the systems, the tools, and the partnerships within digital learning that are really going to empower students to learn, then we can ensure that they're not just able to learn, but they're safe while they're doing so. So let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma. And I would be very interested in seeing the 5 C's as well. So if you do share them in chat,
Yes.
of course, I will check it out just after the panel. And it's great to hear about that sort of wider reaching, policy framework, perhaps. But also as again, thinking about this panel, I think digital citizenship also needs to be considered from the perspective of culture. And I wonder, perhaps, if I may call on Dr. Hamad to share with us, from your perspective, what does success look like for you if digital citizenship is part of culture?
Thank you. I think there are multiple dimensions. Of course, the responsibility and responsible use of digital systems and the way we behave online and through those systems in terms of respecting people, integrity, empathy, and other guidelines is one component. But it's not only the only component. I think the most critical, in my opinion, is the digital literacy. How the community are prepared to use this technology to make the best of it, and also at the same time avoid any harm to individuals or to groups. And then comes also the integration in learning and operation. How this will integrated into our teaching practices, our student using it, and citizen and learner are using it to improve their skills, knowledge, and finding use cases that help solve problems, real problems that we are all facing. I think important also that the community or us are able to measure the impact. So we should be able to measure the impact, and we should be a way to ensure that we improve in that. I think the maturity model as well, if we want to consider, is maybe one way to help us to assess where we are. So, the maturity model starts from ad hoc. When ChatGPT came, everybody was jumping using this tool and that tool, and all of us. And that was just an ad hoc use of it without any plan or structured way or strategy. And then the next level is being managed, that technology or whatever that technology is, including AI, is it well structured? Are there policies, guidelines, training, use cases, and people are aware of how they can make use of it in a more strategic, embedded way into their operation. And the next level is the embedded one, which will become part of the day-to-day operations, how these technologies are integrated into our work, in our learning, in our life. And then comes the optimization. So where are we in these 4 levels, from ad hoc to manage to embedded to optimization? We are at different levels from different organization and individual as well.
And if I may ask some follow-up questions, that's I find that sort of maturity model quite fascinating, and we're in such a changing environment right now technologically, right? Every couple of weeks there is a new refinement to various models out there, and that level of understanding of exactly how to help our children move through those new tools and engage safely, I feel like it's harder every day for teachers and for parents to be able to help children navigate safely. So I wonder if there's anything on a practical level that you would say, you know, do we need to be adjusting how we teach digital literacy at different levels of education or simply age?
Yeah, I think we need one thing we need to do is to avoid those shining objects, those tools comes left and right that we still not sure of how they are going to add value to our education system, and having faculty to study those tools, do some research on them and find some use cases before we jump into integrating them into our classrooms. I think this is something we should do to avoid wasting time and avoid also moving the education from being focusing on student ability to create solutions to just using looks amazing and interesting tools that doesn't add value to the student and to the learner.
Thank you. Richard, I would like to invite you to join the conversation as well. And I wonder if we can look at it from perhaps, you know, learning and teaching perspective. What role do you think international standards and teacher training specifically can play in really embedding that digital responsibility across the curriculum? So not just make it a one-off, but something that we live every day.
I mean, I'm a big fan of common language. And I think in education, we spend a lot of times reinventing the wheel, a lot of times coming up with solutions that other people have already come up with, because we don't always have common language to talk about the work that we're doing. And so when we think about, particularly around this area of technology, which is moving very quickly, not only for digital citizenship, but also using technology to help students learn, I think that's a really key piece of what we need to be doing with AI these days. We don't always have common language. We are the organization I lead, the International Society for Technology and Education, has something called the ISTE standards. The ISTE standards are a list of actions. They're a list of skills that we expect students, teachers, and leaders to be able to demonstrate in this digital learning world that we live in. And the really powerful part about these ISTE standards, and they're adopted in many countries around the world, is that they give some common language. What does it mean when we talk about a knowledge constructor, right? It's this idea of using technology not just to have information pushed out to kids, but to use the technology for them to create their own materials, their own content, their own projects with the technology. Just having some common language can be really powerful. So I think that's something that that really matters. And again, I've said it before, but I'll use this moment to say it one more time, is that it's really important when we are talking about the language, the standards, the policies around technology, that we are framing it in terms of the skills that we want students to take, not in terms of the things we don't want them to do. I visit a lot of schools, and when I visit schools, I often say, hey, can I see your technology policy, your internet use policy, your device policy, whatever it's called, you know, the guidelines that you give? And I've started to collect them. And one of the things that I found is almost all of them are a list of don'ts. Don't share your password, and don't use this to cheat, and don't have your brain turn to mush because you're playing games, and don't be mean online, and they're don'ts. And we don't have nearly enough do's. And so I would suggest, you're welcome to use the ISTE standards. I hope you do. If you're creating your own, I would highly recommend that the language that you use focuses on what you want kids and teachers to be doing with this technology, not on the things you don't want them to be doing with the technology.
Thank you. That's actually a fantastic segue to a sort of a different flavor of a topic that I wanted to talk about now, which is around more empowerment and inclusion, and again, becoming proactive rather than just reactive, right, and positive rather than negative. But I think perhaps to offer a view as to why we have so many don'ts rather than do's, I think that stems from perhaps sometimes lack of understanding or comfort from ourselves on how to positively, right, engage with technology as teachers, as adults, but also perhaps a lack of clarity as to where we should draw the line between, you know, safety and protection versus trusting, you know, and giving agency to our learners to explore on their own. And I wonder if any one of you is willing to explore that a little bit more, you know, where would you draw that line between ensuring safety and building that agency?
Yeah, thanks. Let me come in here, because I think that's the balance that we're all trying to get right, not only as school leaders or teachers, but also as parents. But we know that, I mean, protection and student participation, they're not opposites. I think they reinforce each other. So if you create a system that's only about control, I think, as Richard was saying, you're going to be all about the don'ts, and you're going to lose the trust and the engagement of young people. But if you give total freedom without guidance, then we know that young people are exposed to real risks. So I think you need to do both, build strong safeguards, but also trust young people with a role in shaping those safeguards. So in the work of Safe to Learn in UNICEF, we've seen students trained as digital rights champions, for example, and that's something that can be done at a school level, helping design school codes of conduct, leading peer sessions on online respect, developing the language used in anti-bullying campaigns. I mean, many of these activities are relevant to both the offline and the online world. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, as the previous speaker was saying. And I think when we get that student engagement, then safety stops being something that adults are doing to children, and it becomes something that children and young people do with us. So I think for me, we need to balance that safety with agency, and we need to teach digital citizenship. We need more do's and not don'ts. So I think if we do that, we can give young people the skills and the confidence to protect themselves and others, and hopefully, which is what we all want, to use technology for good.
Thank you very
Can
much.
I just offer
Oh, sorry, John.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was going to just offer an example. I love everything that was just said, and I would just share, you know, my organization, as we start to look at AI, a lot of the AI conversation, again, became very much about don'ts. We just always do that. We just always go to the don'ts. And so we started saying, hey, let's and there are some don'ts, by the way. I'm not saying there aren't any, right? But let's keep that balance. And so we started this thing that has now become sort of a global activity called the AI Innovation Challenge. And I would paste the link here. I don't know if we're able as panelists to share links, but I'll put it there, and then maybe somebody else can share it for me. But the idea is that we have this challenge for schools all around the world, and we say, pick one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, one of the SDGs, and think about ways that you could use AI to help come up with solutions to that particular goal. And then we get these submissions from all around the world, from schools, and we pick the top ones and we fly them to our event every year. But the point is, you know, yes, we highlight some really great solutions, and there's some great ideas that these kids come up with. Oh my goodness. But the real reason for this isn't just to give one or two winners. It's to be able to show and model and explore that this is a problem-solving tool, and it gives an excuse to practice using AI as problem-solving, which is really, really important.
Thank you. Thank you for those practical examples, Gemma and Richard. They always help, right? Help us visualize what we could do differently. And actually, I just had to look at the Q&A, and there's an interesting question that I wanted to rephrase somewhat, because within sort of the school space, you know, we have more control, I guess, over the systems, and we can enact or embed certain policies and use cases, positive as well as negative, right, or proactive. But sometimes problems actually happen after school, right? You know, as parents, perhaps we're not always clear on how to support our children. And I wonder if there's anything any of your organizations do, or you're aware of any initiatives that specifically want to help parents guide their children through that sort of safe engagement in the digital space.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, we all know that, I mean, schools don't stop at, learning doesn't stop at the school gates, and neither does children.
Oh, I'm not sure if it's me. Can you all hear Gemma?
That schools can do.
Sorry, I think we lost you for a moment, but you're back.
Okay, am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's simple things that schools can do to engage parents and to inform. Things as simple, I think, as we're talking about having the internet use policy, but actually discussing that through communications to parents, having guidance on how they expect their students to engage and behave outside of school. I think parents need to be aware of that. And I also think that, as speaking as a parent, things move so fast and it's so hard to know how to protect children in the devices and the spaces devices they're using and the spaces that they're in. And I think the schools have a responsibility to be able to support parents in that. It's so varying when you look at how different schools address these issues. I do like the idea of the common language. I think that would make things a lot easier for school leaders who all have varying skills themselves in this space. So I think it's about for schools, recognizing the role that they need to play as well in really engaging with parents and supporting them, because that's the only way for children. That separation between school and home is not there when it comes to the online space.
I think if I can add to that one, I think what happened in the school, in the classroom, will influence to some level what the student will do outside the classroom, if it is the right and appropriate to the level and interest of the student. So if in the classroom, the lots of emphasis on student co-creating content, not faculty delivery, and not the faculty or the teacher become the focus, and students are able to create their own content, videos, simulation, animation, or problem definitions, and projects like that. When the students go outside, they will be engaged with that, and they will continue maybe doing the same thing outside the classroom. Otherwise, the student will, outside the classroom, when they are at home, will find what make them really happy and excited, and they will do something different to do. So co-creation of content and having student create content. From our experience, content created by student is more appealing and taken positively more than content created by the faculty, especially in this digital space. And I think that's an important thing we should be doing.
And not only is it better received, it's better. The content that students create around this is better than what adults create, right? So your idea is such an important one, is involve them in the process. Every time I visit a school and I walk in and I say, hey, why don't you students, why don't you help us create what you think our digital citizenship, guidelines should be? It's always better than what we would come up with as adults. So it's such a great point to involve students in this.
What I do, I usually run training for teachers and faculty on using some technology, and Notebook LM became recently one of the interesting thing, because you can create through Notebook LM engaging content in terms of video, audio, podcast, critique, debate, and all those different things. But I did run the same thing for our student in the university. I was amazed of what the student be able now to create. They don't depend on the faculty to create the content. They just take the teaching material or the assignment, whatever, and put it in Notebook LM and come with the creative ways of presenting it and discussing it in the class.
Absolutely. And, we all know that active learning and co-creation of learning certainly helps us, retain information better, become more competent, right, at using that information, applying it in practice, and so on. I wonder, Richard, there's a follow-up question from one of the attendees, whether you could elaborate more on how AI can be used as a problem-solving tool.
Yeah, happy to. So I think one of the things that we are, we often use AI for getting an answer, right? Here's a question, give me an answer. In some ways, that's actually the least interesting way we can use AI. And I think we need to be modeling how to use it in some different ways. Here's one way. AI is really good at generating lots of possible options. One of the reasons that humans, our human brains, struggle to come up with solutions is that it's hard for us to think of multiple different options that we've never experienced, right? Part of what makes us amazing as humans is we have these life experiences. But if we haven't experienced something, it's hard for us to imagine it. AI is very good at that. And so here's an example. When I work with students, we'll say, here's something we're trying to do. Please come up with an idea and go to AI and get it to give you 5, 10, 20, 30 more possible solutions for this particular problem. And then your job as the human is to look at the different solutions that AI is providing and evaluate why one might be better than the other. But this idea of using AI to broaden our thinking, that is really powerful. And that's one way that we can do it. Let me give you one more very quickly. Often AI is good at giving us questions that we should be asking. So here's an example. Working on a project, whatever it is, if it's something we're working on for science or for math or something we're writing, whatever it is, we can go into AI and we can say, hey, AI, here's what I'm working on. What are some questions I should be asking that I may not be thinking of? That's a great prompt, and it helps use AI to help us be better problem solvers as opposed to just giving us an answer. Those are the sorts of things that we should be modeling as educators for students, how to use that AI to expand our thinking and make us better problem solvers as opposed to just giving us an answer.
Thank you so much. And I certainly use it in that way, but I also want to always remain cautious that I don't want to stop knowing how to ask those questions myself, right? I think there's always a bit of a risk in that
but I actually
delegate
disagree.
some
I think the more you ask AI to give you better questions, the better it makes you at asking those questions, right? If somebody's telling me, it's just like in class, if my teacher says, hey, this is a better question, if my teacher says that multiple times, I'm eventually going to go, oh, I know what they're going to say, ask a better question. So I actually think AI, if we're using it right, can help us make better questions on our own because it's telling us how to do it the right way over and over again.
Yeah, I think if I add something to this one, sorry, Natalia, we're just taking you maybe away from your structure. I think sometimes we limit AI to text generation and generative AI, but there is the coding ability of AI is amazing. So you can use it to create some simulations that usually you will need a big company, AI company, to create it for you, where you can explore different angles of that problem. And you say, just create for me, for example, simulation to simulate electronic circuit, and if I add components to this one, and it will create a visual one for you by coding it and building it and putting it in front of the student, and student now start playing with different parameters to see the impact of these changes he or she is making. And the ability to create this coding and simulation and animations is really amazing, and we sometimes ignore them in our use. Yeah,
that is very true. Thank you so much. I'm mindful of time, so I will start wrapping up by looking at the future. And I'm thinking perhaps not next year, maybe 5 years into the future, 10 years into the future. If you consider it's 2035, let's say, what do you think are the biggest risks ahead of us that, unless we clearly think about them and address them now, will do real damage in terms of digital citizenship? And that's a question to anyone, all of you.
I mean, I think there's a big risk around the cultural relevance of the kind of said.
We're struggling with sound a bit, Gemma. Oh, I think we might have actually lost Gemma.
oh, sorry.
How
sorry.
about, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I can start. I think the same issues we're facing now will continue being there, which again, issue with privacy and ethical use and access to this technology, equity issues. But I think more reliance on automation, and that may cause more problems in the future in terms of human detachment from the process, employability, and issues related to that.
Thank you. Gemma, would you like to try again?
It's okay. I think I was starting to make my point, but we're nearly out of time. It's fine.
No problem. Anything you'd like to
Let me very
add?
briefly just share that I think my concern, especially as we move into a world that is full of AI, is that we don't spend enough time asking what are uniquely human skills and what are skills that actually are not appropriate for humans to do. And that's hard. That takes some humility, because we've done everything for all this time, right? Anytime there was a higher level skill, humans did it because we were the only game in town. And there are some things where the human decision making is far worse than AI. When it comes to synthesizing lots of information, when it comes to a whole variety of finding trends and patterns, like those are things that the human brain just isn't really good at. And when we try to hold on to those things, we make worse decisions than when we know that we need to hand them off to AI. But the flip side is also true. When there are things that really are uniquely human things, and we could talk about what those are. I think empathy, I think discernment, I think judgment. We could debate those. When we hand those things off to AI, when they are really better served by our human intelligence, we are not setting ourselves up for success. And so that's my message that I would leave is we need to spend a lot more time thinking about what are human skills that should never be handed off to AI. What are skills that really would be far better if we stop trying to do them as humans and hand them off to AI? And what are those skills where we make much better solutions when AI and humans work together to get something done that neither one could do well on their own?
I absolutely love this answer. That's I used earlier this week where I spoke at a different event about how we approach AI. It's quite a cliche to say, just because we can doesn't mean we should, right? There certainly are areas that we should really strive to keep for humans, right? At least until we're more confident, perhaps, with technology, right? And there are certain sort of standards and guidelines in place that we can safely use.
But don't forget, everybody forgets the second part of that. The opposite is also true. There are things that we keep trying to do as humans that we're doing a bad job of. Stop doing that. Hand that off to AI. If we say one side, we have to always say the other. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting about this future is if we can get both of those right.
Perhaps you're answering my last question that I wanted to ask you, which is, what would you say, what lesson or advice, practical advice would you leave to educators?
بين الصورة منيحة؟ هيك أحسن.
Hello? Thank you. So just my last question would be, what would you leave as one piece of practical advice for schools or educators that they could implement tomorrow or next week at schools? Gemma?
I think, one thing I think that school leaders and policymakers could start doing tomorrow is to make digital safety part of everyday school culture. So it's not an add-on.
Thank you. Dr. Hamad?
Yeah, I think having every student go through a digital literacy course in every university, I think that in every school, I think that's important, including safety, of course.
Thank you.
And I agree with both of those. I would just add to make sure that as educators, we are modeling using technology to increase curiosity. These are such powerful tools to help us be creators, to help us take something and learn more deeply about it. If we are using technology to just present information, that is a very poor use of technology. We should be using technology as a way to accelerate curiosity. And if we can do that, and I know so many of you are doing that, I'm so excited to get to work with QRTA because you all do such a great job. But keep that in the forefront. Curiosity, accelerate curiosity and creativity with technology. If we do that, we will be in great shape.
Thank you very much. And I would just add to that, keep experimenting bravely and then apply judiciously based on those learnings, because definitely, as educators, we are so influential, right, in terms of how our pupils, our students learn and engage with technology. So we should act as the example there. Thank you so much to my panelists, Richard Coletta, Gemma Wilson-Clark, Dr. Hamad Al-Rabi. Thank you very much, and for having me host today.
نقاش ثري فعلا. التكنولوجيا مسؤولية قبل أن تكون أداة، وهذه الجلسة وضحت ذلك بشكل رائع.
Exactly, Wafa. Being a digital citizen is all about using innovation wisely and respecting others online. Now, get ready for something truly meaningful.